All right, all right. Mondays with Mooch. I am Joe Muccioli, or Mooch, and these events are produced and presented by the nonprofit organization Jazz Arts Project. And our platinum presenting partner is Ocean First Bank, with support from Monmouth Arts and from you, our supporting members. So thank you, thank you, thank you. So, composer, arranger, saxophonist, and woodwind doubler Andy Farber has been a part of our team of world-class musicians since the very beginning of our organization. He has been the lead alto saxophonist in the Red Bank Jazz Orchestra and has appeared on many of our events over the years. But when you think of Andy, you think of a dapper bon vivant who has played everywhere, been everywhere, and met everyone, from musicians all over the world to celebrity musicians to celebrities. And yes, he is a Trekkie. Andy grew up on Long Island in a musical family and subsequently carried his passion all the way to a vibrant career today. Currently, he is director of the prestigious BMI Jazz Composers Workshop and teaches jazz composition at the Juilliard School in New York City. When not performing, Andy composes music for television and film at Duotone Audio Group and Storefront Music in New York City. His work as an arranger and conductor and instrumentalist can be heard on numerous recordings, including 4 albums under his own name. Andy's in constant demand as a multifaceted reed man. A sampling of groups or artists he has performed with are Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra, the Duke Ellington Orchestra, the Count Basie Orchestra, Artie Shaw Band, the Harry James Band, Illinois Jacquette Big Band, Vince Giordano Nighthawks, John Hendricks, Bob DeRoe, Banu Gibson, Andy Stein's Blue Four, Hillary Cole, Marcus Roberts, Bobby Short, the Onyx Club Sextet, and on and on and on. You may have even caught Andy on stage on Broadway in the band for the smash musical After Midnight a few years ago. While studying at the Manhattan School of Music, my old alma mater, Andy formed his own quintet called the Hard Bop Repertory Company. Since then, he has led several other ensembles, including Andy Farber and his Swing Mavens, an 8-piece ensemble. Come to think of it, that group played at my wedding. Anyway, he also leads a full 16-piece big band, Andy Farber and his orchestra, which enjoyed a 2-year residency at Birdland in New York City and continues to perform and record to this day. Folks, let's welcome to the Zoom room, Andy Farber.
Hi, gang. I'm not ready, though. I have one thing that I must get.
Yeah. Here. Welcome, Andy.
Thank you, Mooch. I've developed a little
Have
bit
there.
for
What are you
Campari
drinking?
for some reason.
I usually have my limoncello, but I'm slacking tonight.
Oh, no.
I might have to go get it.
Well, wait.
Right. Why not?
By the way, I should mention that in my car, with the Bluetooth and the phone hooked up, if I have to call you, I'll hit a button. I say, call Mooch. And the car, Siri will say, calling Mooche. It pronounces it Mooche because I have the E on the end. So,
oh, okay. There you go.
apropos
Mooche.
of nothing, I just thought I would
Mooche.
volunteer that.
Is that
Mooche.
French with the E?
I think so.
There you go. You're looking good.
Thank you. That's nice of you to say. Also, as well, my man.
Well, that's
Greg
nice of you to
Green's
say.
blending in with the background,
Right. A bunch of saxophones over there, looks like.
Yeah, I've been doing some recording from home for some TV commercials and things where I have to overdub every part in a saxophone section.
Right.
And,
it's interesting. You've been doing this for several years now. It's not just COVID you're doing this for. You've been doing this from home a lot, right?
Often for a TV commercial or a film cue, if it's only a few seconds of something or a minute or two of music that's going to be in the background, we may opt to do overdub sessions. I always prefer to be in the same room with all the musicians and get it done in a half an hour, but
Sure.
sometimes this is how it goes. So
Yeah,
in order
but
to simulate 5 saxophones, I actually play 5 different saxophones with different mouthpieces and reeds, and try to play like 5 separate people.
yeah, now we're getting into the weeds here.
Well, it helps when you have multiple personality disorder.
There you go. Maybe that's the issue with multiple reed men. Is that is that a common affliction?
I wouldn't know.
You are correct, sir.
I'll ask the other.
Who's chiming in there? Somebody said I was correct. Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
but he said it like Ed McMahon. You are correct, sir.
that's right. There you go. I know that you have a new project you had been working on. You recorded, and you're getting ready to release.
That's right. New big band album. You mentioned in the introduction that I was in the on-stage band for that show After Midnight.
Right.
And when you play a Broadway show, you have to play 8 shows a week, right? And
Exactly the same every night.
well, this we had a little bit of leeway because we were playing a lot of Duke Ellington and some things that had been played at the Cotton Club, and there were sections where there was improvisation or stride piano or something like
Yeah.
that. So we would change up what we could,
It
but
was a great
the
show.
form
I,
of
I
everything
saw
had
it.
to be the same.
I saw it during its Broadway run. It was a fantastic show.
I wish it had run a bit longer, but it is somewhat mind-numbing to have to play the same thing 8 times a week. But I must tell you, the band was so tight by the end that we decided we had to just keep playing together. So the band on the recording is basically the same instrumentation, the same people that had done the show, with only a couple of minor changes because our good friend James Burton, who plays in the trombone section, was out of town, was on the road. He just couldn't be in town. And Greg Gisbert, who played trumpet with us, was living in Colorado and wasn't going to be available either. But my longtime friend and yours, Brian Peresci, played lead trumpet. And he
Sure.
often plays with us with the Red Bank Band.
I sent him an invitation for tonight. I'll see if he shows up.
Well, he might,
But
but he's got a lot of children, so that requires that's a different level of homework. Someone asked, what was it like to play a Broadway show? When you commit to that, are you able to play other gigs or find time to record elsewhere? Okay, that is a good question. I've only done one Broadway show, and that was After Midnight, which, as I was doing it, I was telling people, this is my first and last Broadway show. And not that I have anything against playing Broadway, but you don't see your family. You're off one night a week. You are, by the union contract will allow you to take off nearly 50% of the time if you have an appropriate sub. However, for this particular show, I was unofficially the band leader. I wasn't the conductor of the show, but it was put together with Jazz at Lincoln Center, and Wynton Marsalis had me be kind of the band wrangler, if you will.
straw boss.
The straw boss. I was sort of the Duke Ellington police, because the conductor was a Broadway orchestrator and piano player, but jazz wasn't his particular forte, although he was very, very able, competent musician. This was more my area of expertise. So in order to compensate for me or punish me, I can't determine which, I was made the contractor, which meant that I had to do the payroll every week. And having me do the payroll is a lot like having Ray Charles as your chauffeur.
Right.
Which probably would have been fine if he knew the way, you know. It was outside of my skill set, and I did my best, but we got another like 50% overage on the scale
For being on stage.
being on no for being the contractor. Plus we had an
Oh.
overage for being on stage and for being in a costume, which was really just a dinner jacket, you know, a tuxedo. But so
I wish we had a clip of that show.
I
because-
rarely took off because I would lose money, by not doing it. My wife would rather. I said, gee, I should stay home with the children and cook dinner, and she would calculate how much that would actually cost us, and say, no, we'll manage without you. I rarely took off.
I wish we had a clip of that show. Do you know of one we could wrangle up?
I don't. They
keep a tight rein on it.
Taped it informally one time, but
oddly enough, my wife and I went on a cruise back in September on Norwegian, and what was the show? It was After Midnight, and it was terrible because they boiled it down to like a 8-piece band, and it didn't swing. I mean, the visuals were cool and the dancing was cool, but the band wasn't happening.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's the kind of thing that if you don't know how to play that music, you can't really do it. There's certain kinds of music that trained professional musicians can play and play well.
Yeah.
And if they were doing Oklahoma or, Guys and Dolls or Carousel or something, that probably would have been fine. But to play vintage swing music or even pre-swing, is a specialized thing that only a few people really know how to do properly, pardon me, even amongst professional players. So it's unlikely that a band on a cruise ship would be able to pull it off.
Right.
Now, I've not actually taken a cruise, but my wife Stacy and I once went on a crossing with the Queen Mary 2.
Mm-hmm.
And this was through Juilliard, so they sent me as a lecturer, and it was essentially a free trip for Stacy and I. And the only thing I had to pay for was her return air ticket.
Right.
And we even got 50% off on the wine, on the or the alcohol, right? Because that you have to pay for. And they have a really great wine cellar.
Sure.
And I'm an old Bordeaux guy, so we're at a table in the dining room with all these other people. And I told them, I said, I'm a lecturer and I get half off all this. So let's order whatever we want. And they gave us, so they were piling on the cash.
You got half off the bottles too?
This is what I'm saying. Yeah.
Wow. That's cool.
So it was a particularly good deal.
Sure. I did the crossing on the QE2. The older version of that.
This is the replacement of the QE2.
Right.
And it's a little bit bigger, if you can imagine that. But the point being is that when we got on the ship, we decided we would go to the theater, and they would have an orchestra playing behind the acts and all this. And I told my wife, just sort of jokingly, I said, musicians that are on a cruise ship are either 20 years old, 22 years old, right out of music school, and this is their first job, or they're middle-aged guys who've just recently been divorced and were thrown out of the house.
Or from Czechoslovakia.
Yeah. Or I didn't mention that. I just said it's either, kids right out of school or middle-aged people, mostly middle-aged guys that were thrown out of the house. And then we go in the ballroom and everyone in the orchestra is either 20 or 56. And my wife starts laughing her ass off. She thought I was just being, silly. Oh, well, why do you have to be so negative? I said, I'm not being negative. This is just what I think. I'm rarely right about anything, by the way, but that I nailed.
Well, we learned that when we get married, right?
No, I was pretty much told that before. I figured it out.
Well, there you go.
I think it's safe to park here. Anyone that's hung out in Manhattan knows that phrase.
Right.
You only say that once or twice before you learn that.
Yep, absolutely. So,
but I was answering your question until I went off on my own tangent, which is the new recording project, other than two people, is the same band that played After Midnight. And a guest on one tune is the great singer Catherine Russell. And if you're not hip to Catherine Russell, please to get hip, because she's really one of the real people doing it now. There's no pretentious affectation with her. You feel like you know her when you hear her sing a song. It's the real stuff.
So we have this little clip about the project, right? Why don't I
Okay, yeah, this will explain
play
everything.
it, and maybe it'll explain everything. Let's see. New album, right? Okay, let's see that. Uh,
One, two,
What I really love about this project is it's a high level of composing and arranging, but rarely do you get to do it with a band that you spent a lot of time playing with, so the camaraderie is incredible.
How did I meet Andy? That's a good question.
That's a good question.
We met at Sonny's place on Long Island, like in the summer of '90.
But how many years would that be?
We met some years ago, probably the early 90s. I was working with the Duke Ellington Orchestra. Andy came in and subbed a few gigs with the band, and I loved his playing, and been friends since.
A long way. He's one of my best friends. Yeah, I play bass because of him.
Is that over almost 30 years now? Wow, we're getting old.
This project is about some new music that I've written.
This edition of the band was assembled a few years ago to become the on-stage band at the Broadway musical After Midnight. After nearly 300 performances, we had developed a certain kind of musical radar with each other, a kind of intimacy that musicians develop when they play together frequently. In the time since the show closed, we played some concerts and appeared at nightclubs, but this is our first recording project together.
I wanted to really record this my way and select all the musicians and select all the compositions. The way we recorded this was almost like a time capsule of how something would have been done in 1960. Everybody's in the same room. Nobody's wearing headphones. We're playing everything live together like we would if we were playing at a nightclub or a concert hall.
This is like modern day Alive, not just learned from textbook music, but really from people that have experienced playing like that. It's alive.
It's a throwback, but at the same time, it's very fresh.
I think like the ability to swing is, it's not easy. It's definitely not easy. It's one of the hardest things to do, and this band swings. That's one of the things that I'm really proud to be a part of.
It's just so well written. It's so well written, and it swings, and it's very soulful all at the same time.
And you can tell that he spent a lot of time thinking about this mute change that happens in 3 or 4 bars. At first, when you first read it, you're like, that's not going to be possible. And then when you play through it, it's like, wow, he thought about, like he knows the instrument.
So when he was talking about this project, it's a no-brainer. I'm like, when is it? I'm there.
So there you have it.
I should mention that this will be coming out just after the new year, and we're doing this on Artist Share Records, where you could buy a copy of a recording as a CD or just as a download. And there's different levels if you want to have, for example, if you're a musician and you want to have access to scores and things like that, then
is there a link that you could share that people could go to?
We didn't officially launch it yet, but if you went to the Artist Share, which I think is one word website, and put me in the search, you'll see the project, but it's not featured yet because we haven't figured out what the date is going to be, but it's going to be sometime after the new year. By the way, I've noticed that there was a couple of questions which I could. Carmen has asked. The unique thing about the show, meaning after midnight, right, was that there were different stars as headliners. Yes, that's actually true. We went through a few, and theoretically, it could have gone on. Not quite plug and play, but Dule Hill, who's primarily a tap dancer, but a very good singer as well. And he's done some acting, like if anyone was a fan of The West Wing, he was a regular on that series, actually, and then a co-star on a program after that called Psych, which was a half-hour, I think it was a half hour, it was an hour comedy thing. So he's done a bunch of acting, but he had been, I think, the original cast of Bringing the Noise, Bringing the Funk, and a couple other Broadway things before that, primarily as a dancer.
Turns out I found a clip from the show.
Oh, you did? Oh, good. Yeah.
I did. Should we play it?
Why not?
I hope it's from the Broadway. You tell me. It's hard. Sometimes it's hard to know.
I'll send up a flare if it's not us.
All right.
That looks like smaller band, but it could be us. I can't see. Oh yeah, I guess that is us. Oh yeah.
Is it loud enough?
Just as soon as you tore the seat out of your last pair of pants. Now he around here preaching and whining and begging for a chance to make good, but that's history. 3 words, history.
Dig-a-dig-a-doo, dig-a-doo. You love me and I love you, and when you love it, it's natural too. Dig-a-dig-a-doo, dig-a-doo. Dig-a-dig-a-doo, dig-a-doo.
Right. So
like
some of those were actually clips from before we went to Broadway. We did this as a week-long exhibition at City Center.
Oh.
And
I was going to say, it looked like a bootleg recording.
Yeah.
Not very good quality.
But
that that balloon dance captivated me when I saw the show. That was a great bit. It was really well done, that balloon thing.
Yeah, I remember that because what happened later in the night is, or in the week, balloons would go up in the rafters and then eventually lose some of their gas, and they would just
Start
randomly
dropping.
fall back to the bandstand, and then we would just screw around by throwing them at each other. And the director would give us notes. Don't do that. Don't throw the balloons around.
Right.
I mean, we would
Right.
find other things to do to amuse ourselves because if it's 8 times a week, sometimes you need to change it up. So we would do the Duke Ellington tune, Black and Tan. Oh, no, so the Creole Love Call. And Greg Gisbert would have a solo. And to try to make me laugh during the show, he would quote television show theme songs from the 1960s during his solo on the Duke. Nobody else would notice this, but all of a sudden it's like, he's just playing Mod Squad back there,
Right.
And I would have my phone on my music stand so the audience couldn't see it. And I would get on the Facebook going, Gizzy just quoted Mod Squad. And every day at the same time, people would see that.
You had to be somewhat discreet because you guys were on stage too.
Yeah, you had to be. I mean, there was a rule about not having liquids on the bandstand, except for you could have water and vodka because I were told that they wouldn't stain anything. But as the contractor, it was my job to tell the substitutes what the rules are, and sometimes it slipped through the fingers. So one of my favorite stories is our good friend, who's no longer with us, unfortunately, Lou Soloff, brilliant trumpet player. But sometimes he could be a little loose, with the rules and regulations. And one day he was subbing for Greg Gisbert, and he got this giant beaker of coffee from Starbucks, right? And he, unbeknownst to me, brings it on stage. And the trumpet section is sitting up on the third tier, right? So there's risers, the saxophones are at the bottom, then the trombones, and then the trumpets. And he's sitting in the trumpet. And he's got to stand up and play the solo that Gizzy usually does. And he had put this giant coffee down next to him. Now, behind him, some of the girl dancers have to make a costume change. And he stands up to take a solo, inadvertently kicks over this giant beaker of iced coffee all over someone who's making a costume change. And during this trumpet solo, he's playing with the plunger music, wah, wah, all this Cootie Williams stuff. And then you hear a lady go, ah!
Yeah,
well, I don't know if it ruined the costume or anything, but because I was the contractor, I heard a lot about it. I was like, don't let anybody take drinks on the bandstand. So after this, I'm giving, I have to read the riot act to Lou Soloff, who's like one of my mentors, was one of my, that I've known since I was a kid in Manhattan School of Music. And he's like, okay. And then all of a sudden he hears his phone ringing. And he says, wait, I got to get this. And oh, the phone's in his locker, which is Gizzy's locker, but he can't get in there because he doesn't know the combination. I said, your phone's in the locker. How'd you get it open? He says, well, Gizzy texted me the combination. So where's the combination? In my phone, which is locked in the locker. It's like, that was the day we had, But this is what we love because, the show's the same thing 8 times a week. So these little things make it
it's quite it's still it's a different scene if you're doing a show and you're in the pit. There's a lot more leeway of being in the pit and doing a show. Some pretty crazy stuff goes on.
Let me just look at some of the other questions we have in the chat. Carmen has all the good questions, and I didn't finish that with the headliners on the show. When we started, Dulé Hill was the host. And then the featured singer was Fantasia Barrino, who was sort of like a modern day Dinah Washington, kind of, But then K.D. Lang, who's a very different style singer, came in, and we had Vanessa Williams, who's really like Broadway is her bag, but she knows, Lena Horne and that kind of.
That's who I saw.
That sort of crossed over into pop music or Broadway, like Leslie Uggams, who, by the way, is a very good jazz singer, but she's known more for Broadway musicals. And, so Vanessa, she's from that kind of tradition. And let's see, who else did it? Patti LaBelle. And she was good. Very good.
Sure.
And there's a couple other people I've forgotten, but
They'd all have
had
to
it
fit
down
into
on.
that those same tunes, same repertoire.
They were mostly doing the same tunes.
Yeah. So you
Yeah.
had different takes on those tunes.
Pardon me, particularly Katie Lang.
Right.
Because she's not coming from musical theater and she's not coming from jazz. She's got her own thing, which I guess is sort of folky or folk mixed with sort of like Americana roots music, whatever you want to say. But she's not really coming out of the blues as much, but she does respect blues singers. And she
Did
told
you
me
have
that listen to
Did you have to write different arrangements?
and people like that, but that wasn't her background per se.
Did you have to write different arrangements in different keys for each one of them?
Well, I didn't write the arrangements; they were already there, and because of a union regulation, I was told that I couldn't write any of the arrangements. So the only thing I wrote for the show was when we were supposed to do the Tony Awards. There was going to be a segment for After Midnight where we did It Don't Mean a Thing, and originally we were going to go and play, and our cast was going to come out and do a big number. So I wrote an arrangement on It Don't Mean a Thing for the Tonys, and then we were told, and this is how show business people work who don't know. I'm probably supposed to watch my language here, right? What kind of leeway have I got?
You're among friends.
If everyone remembers the movie The Jerk, directed by Carl Reiner, there was a scene where Navin Johnson is played by Steve Martin, goes out in the world, and his father has to teach him the difference between shit and shinola, right? And he just shows him a tin of shinola that you would use to shine your shoes, and he says, "This is shit," and points on the ground, and this is shinola, and that was it. I mean, it was just a gag. But the people that produced the Tonys obviously did not make that distinction. So they thought that, well, we could have the band play live on stage at Radio City and have the dancers come out and do their tap dancing, but we ought to pre-record the taps so that we get a good clean, right? Joe, you're laughing. Why? Because it's so precision. If anyone knows anything about swinging, tap dancing is basically like playing the drums, except you're doing it with your feet and you're using the stage instead of a drum. And it has to be in real time with the music. So if you were to pre-record the drums, in this case tap dancing, the band would have to play along with headphones, which is very difficult to do, to play to a click and all that. So, and then we would be doing the tune It Don't Mean a Thing if it ain't got that swing. So we would be in danger of not swinging in an attempt to stay upon this click. So I just, I'm just the standard saxophone player in the band, but I'm like, no, this is not going to happen. You can do it the other way around. You could pre-record the band and have the dancers go live.
Right.
That will work, but don't do it the other way around. So we lost a lot of money because they wanted to have the After Midnight band on stage to pretend to play or to play along with these pre-recorded clicks. But I knew it was going to be a disaster, and who wants a disaster on national television? So instead, the music was pre-recorded. I wrote the arrangement, and it was the After Midnight band playing, but it was the house band at the Tony Awards on stage pretending to play.
Okay, so
which, by the way, they do about 50% of the time because everything is pre-recorded, and there's certain things that they'll play live and certain things that end up being the pre-record.
Yeah, that's what's happening these days. So the band from those beginnings continued on to this day, theoretically out of separation
of After Midnight with only a few little changes. So
after midnight.
After midnight. That's right.
We've gotten to your recording, and we have.
By the way, before we even made the recording, actually, it may have been after we made the recording, but we did this concert at NJPAC. Mm-hmm. This was a few years ago. This is before we did the recording. This is 2016. Before the Rona, back during the Obama administration. I'm not trying to be political. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done that.
You d- you did
But we did a performance at NJ Pack with the band, and it was billed as the After Midnight Orchestra. And the show we did, which sometimes in theory will be going on, is called Jazz in the Key of Ellison. And we took the record collection of the great Ralph Ellison, and we have people that are reading excerpts from prose that Ellison has written, or bits from Invisible Man, if everyone knows that great book that Ellison wrote. He's most famous for that one, but there's all kinds of essays and treatises that he's done over time. And we would have a reading, and then we would play a piece of music that was maybe significant musically in the great continuum timeline of our music. And that was the show. And we've done it since in other parts of the country. And after all this service blows over, hopefully we'll be able to do it again.
Yeah, I'm sorry. The reason I'm laughing is because of one of the questions wants to know. Stephen wants to know, how does your glass keep getting filled each time you take it without us seeing it? But we haven't been seeing the filling.
I'm just being stealthy.
Apparently.
It's a recirculating martini glass. Negroni.
We thought maybe it was an unending glass, an unending.
I got to figure that one out.
Yeah.
Carmen says when a band plays together at the same time, she likes it when the band. How many days did it take you to rehearse and then record? What was your budget? What do you want to accomplish with this record? Okay, that's a great question. I like when the band plays together in the same room at the same time, because we're constantly making microscopic adjustments to each other. As Wynton Marsalis would say, this is the democracy. I'm not going to do an impression of him right now, but it's very democratic, right? You know, you play the beat one way and we respond, the soloist, and it's back and forth, and we're making constant adjustments, you know, like driving in traffic, to each other, which never works when you track a rhythm section and then maybe a brass section or read one at a time. You know, you're always playing to the people that had recorded before you, but they can't hear you. They're at home already, right? So playing not only the way we perform in real time, but also in the same space, right? So no one's wearing headphones and no one's in a closet, right? Very often people do where the drummer's in a booth and the piano is under a huppah and the bass is in another closet and this, you know, whatever. I don't like that. And there's acoustical reasons not to do that, because the overtone series of a musical instrument is unique to that kind of instrument. And when it blends with the overtone series of another instrument in the same space and then leaks into a microphone, it has a particular sound that you can't get when you record those instruments in isolation without the bleed and the marrying of those acoustical sounds in the same place. So I always prefer to record acoustic music all at the same time.
So we do have a clip of you in a recording session, recording one of the tunes from the album.
Okay. If anyone has the patience for this, we should play it.
I think we should play it.
Are you going to play the long one or the short one?
Shorter one. 4 minutes.
Okay, that's the shorter one. Okay.
About Joe Temperley. I don't know if you want to set that up, but it goes to it goes to, before we start that, it goes to your multi saxophones over there lined up, and you know what you're playing here is I guess the granddaddy of them all.
The baritone. I rarely play the baritone. I'm more often seen or heard playing tenor or alto. Okay, right. So, right, this is the baritone, and I rarely play it, but I like to play it. I don't so much like carrying it around, though, but I like to play it.
And in giving with the physics of sound lesson, it's large, So therefore, it sounds low.
Right.
It sounds the lowest of the saxophone section.
Yeah, there are bigger ones, but they're not very practical and they're rarely used. So there's a horn just bigger than this called the bass saxophone. And
Right.
sometimes you'll see it used as a bass instrument. If anybody ever goes to hear Vince Giordano's band, you'll know that he plays the tuba and the bass fiddle, right? And the bass saxophone, which is bigger than this. And it always functions as a bass instrument rather than a melodic instrument. And there's actually one bigger than that, which is an octave, sounds an octave lower than this thing, called the contrabass. There are not many in captivity, although strangely enough, I know of two of them in Bergen County, New Jersey. Paul Cohen, who's a well-known classical saxophonist and a professor at the Manhattan School of Music, has a original old contrabass saxophone. And I think they even live in the same town. The other guy that has one is a jazz musician called Scott Robinson, who's a multi-instrumentalist, primarily a jazz tenor saxophone player, but he plays anything that you can pass air through.
I can tell you that there's another one.
All right, so well that's not a bass saxophone from the 20s. That's a reproduction, probably made in Germany by Eppelsheim or something that even as a lower note. But
we happen to have Tom Bones Malone on as a guest a couple of weeks ago, and he brought this picture with him.
Okay. Oh, right, and Tom plays the baritone saxophone.
Right.
And well, he's like Scott, except that Scott's a woodwind player who can play brass instruments, and Tom Malone's a brass player who plays woodwinds also, right? So he plays primarily trombone. Somebody showed me.
It's kind of like a singer who can dance or a dancer who can sing.
Right. He showed me a concert program. Someone showed me a concert program from North Texas State in like 1967, where Tom Malone plays lead trombone in the 1 o'clock band, but he plays second trumpet in the 2 o'clock band.
That's right.
And he plays first tenor saxophone in the 3 o'clock band and baritone and saxophone in the 4 o'clock. Like he's in 4 big bands on 4 different instruments.
His whole day was taken care of, just playing big bands.
Like his profession and his hobby was music.
That's right. So, do you want to lead up to playing this clip, or should I just dive in and play it?
I just want to say that it's dedicated to the baritone saxophonist Joe Temperley. He was, I guess you could say he succeeded Harry Carney as the baritone saxophonist in the Duke Ellington Orchestra. This was prior to Duke's death by about a month, but he never played. He may have subbed for Harry before, but he wasn't. Ellington was in hospital and had not been told that Harry Carney had passed away. But Joe was his replacement. Originally from Edinburgh in Scotland, and moved to London to seek his fame and fortune as a jazz saxophonist, as a tenor player, and had subbed in the Humphrey Lyttelton band. And Humphrey Lyttelton had been in the 70s and 80s a television presenter, but before that led a dance band. And Joe subbed on the tenor chair, and to the delight of Humph, as they called him, said, "Wow, I would love to have you in the band, but our tenor player is coming back. But we have an opening for a baritone player. Do you play baritone?" And Joe told him he did, which was a lie because he was a tenor player. So he got a hold of a baritone and a mouthpiece and joined the band and took to it really naturally. And that really became his voice. And that was probably in the mid-50s. There's some videos you can find of Joe playing with Hump's small band, backing up the American blues singer Big Joe Turner. And Joe had the opportunity to move to New York in 1966 or 7, playing with the Thad Jones Mel Lewis Orchestra for a while. And then he was with Woody Herman's band. And then the Ellington band. And stayed with Mercer Ellington after Duke died for many years. And then was the very first baritone saxophone player in the Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra. And stayed there until about 5 or 6 years ago. and he's gone maybe about 4 years now.
And he was first call for any baritone chair that you would want in a band.
Well, he should have been, but he
and a
was
beloved,
sort of a
beloved
specialist
character in New York.
Yeah, he was a character. That's true.
Yes.
He made the baritone saxophone sound like a beautiful woodwind instrument when other people were playing it like a chainsaw. He really made it sound great. So
All right.
I wrote this piece after he died in tribute to him, and I'm actually playing his horn on the recording.
Okay, so here we go. Portrait of Joe Temperley. Thunderous applause.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
That was great. Certainly in the character of Joe Temperley. I'm going to ask Carmen to say a couple of dozen words just for a second, and then we'll come back.
Well, first and foremost, Joe, you'll have to send me that link so I can play that again when we finish this show. That was a beautiful, beautiful piece. I really like that. So thank you very, very much for sharing that with us, Andy. Wonderful. Thank you all. Thank you all for being here tonight. We are entering October. We're entering the last several months of 2020. So I don't know. It's been a really difficult year, to say the least. So I would be looking forward to 2021. But we are doing our thing, thanks to Joe and the team here and our board, who's here supporting us. Jazz Arts Project is still doing its thing, and we would like your help and your support with a donation. We've completed our middle school program, which is a free middle school program, a 6-week program for students this summer, and we have the Jazz Arts Academy still happening. People are doing virtual learning, and we are now getting the hang of this virtual thing. So please join us at jazzartsproject.org/donate to make a contribution. And I'll just want to share real quick that Jazz Arts Project believes in the power of music to change lives across generations and through all kinds of cultural and socioeconomic divides. Jazz is an art form which embodies the freedom of expression that our country was founded upon. Your support allows us to continue valuable programs which enhance the cultural landscape of our community. So please join us. That's all I got, Joe.
Thank you, Carmen. Very well said. And I think this is 21. It's the 21st episode of Mondays with Mooche. So, Andy, thank you for being with us. And, we have a few minutes. We can address some of the questions, I think, that started populating.
Ask away.
It's too small for me to even see. Anybody, Carmen or Jacqueline, do you have those?
Sure, yeah. So there are a few questions in here. Stephen asked, are we overthinking the science of playing music? Isn't the essence of jazz the immediate interaction of one player with others?
I mean, that's certainly part of it, usually. I mean, having the spontaneous communication.
I think, Andy, you were addressing like the actual technique of recording a big band. Getting the best sound
there's a further distinction, which is not only playing with people in real time, but also playing in the same room, because even if you're in real time but separated by glass, you may have certainly but in the before time, when people would record, often they'd be in separate rooms separated by glass where you could have eye contact with your colleagues, but only that the microphones would pick up your instrument but not theirs, and it would have to be mixed later. And that's not how we hear stuff. For certain kinds of music, it makes perfect sense. But, string quartets record with 4 of them. No one's wearing headphones. They're on a stage in a recital hall. And we put up a stereo pair of microphones, or however many microphones we're using for it. And the quartet will play and blend. We don't overdub them in separate rooms, try to get isolation. What if we screw up, We may have several takes of something, and maybe a very good engineer can edit from one to another, the way they did for Glenn Gould when he'd record classical piano solo. He'd play several takes and he might chop it up and find the perfect combination of take 1 and take 3, and we're going to do this bit from take 2 and this bit from take 7 or whatever, which is how Wynton Marsalis records. Everyone's in the same room in a concert hall, and they'll record without an audience and then edit the heck out of it. Or just go for complete takes. So my recording is mostly complete takes. Sometimes, we really blew it on that ending, so let's just play the last 16 bars or something like that, and then we figure out a way to knit it together digitally. But we're all playing in the same room, and
and it's a different experience seeing a band like that in a club or a concert situation where it is indeed a live, of the moment performance.
Any other questions about that? I mean, I can go into greater detail and bore you to death about the science of recording music, and professional recording engineers probably won't agree with me. Classical engineers would, but the people that record jazz and commercial music often put the comfort of the players and the acoustics of point source imaging, if that means anything to you. You know, when you're in a concert hall or a nightclub, you can say, oh, the drums are over there and the piano's over there, and you hear things in this natural way in an environment. And very often commercial like recordings that are done by engineers want more control. They want to just control everything. And the music becomes subordinate to the technology.
Andy, you were on our record also, the Red Bank Jazz Orchestra, in addition to all the performances you appeared on with our groups. I have a little clip of something from our record that we recorded in very much the same way that you're talking about.
Oh, I remember that. We were all in the same room also.
Yeah.
And
I'd like to share it if
play
I may.
It. Yeah. Oh, cool.
If I could find it. Here it is. That was that.
All right.
That was fun.
Okay.
So, same room, same kind of recording getup. I think Andy probably had some input on that date as well as to how we were going to set up and everything.
Yeah, sounds about right. We played pretty well together. It occurred to me as I'm watching that we have some of the same people also on my recording on my previous recording, right?
That's
so
right.
Dan Block is on my new record, and so Sean Edmonds and Brian Peresci and guitar player James Chirillo. Kurt Basher, who played baritone on your thing, usually plays in my band, but he was at his brother's wedding when I recorded, so he couldn't make it.
Right.
Bruce Williams has played in my band many times, but he's not on the recording. Mark Faniff is on tenor on this record and played on my last album. Wayne Goodman, of course.
Those are the guys. Those are the guys in New York right now that can do this kind of music.
A lot of the same people. It's somebody once said there was a humorist for Downbeat magazine many years ago, which is actually before my time. And there was a comic that would write a humor column under the name George Crater, which isn't real a person. I think it's supposed to sound like Judge Crater or something like that. And the record label Riverside, as when it was owned by Orrin Keep News, made a comedy album of routines by George Crater. And it's interesting to listen to stand-up comedy with no audience, by the way. Although now I guess it's like watching the Yankees with no cheering crowd.
Right.
But I had this record as a kid. Somehow it was in my father's record collection. And they talked about jazz on television, and the comic is speaking in kind of a beatnik affectation, like, yeah, you got to dig the meeting. It's like, okay, we're going to have big band night on TV, and it's going to be very fine and very good. We're going to have Woody Herman and Count Basie and Stan Kent or whatever it is. And he says, to save a few bucks, we're going to just hire one band and change leaders, right?
That's right.
But to make it seem honest, the first trumpet player will play third trumpet for Woody Herman, but then he'll play first trumpet for Count Basie, and then he'll play fourth trumpet for Kenton, and then he'll play third trumpet. We're just going to keep shifting people around. And that's kind of what happens. It's like in New York, there's a pool of players, and there's basically one large band, and we just keep changing leaders.
Right. That's right. It happens with combos, too. It could be a quintet, and whoever is the leader on that night, he's the leader, and it's that person's quintet. It's the Bruce Williams quintet one night. It's the, Brandon McCune quintet the next night, or whatever. And this way they could get 5 different gigs on the same series. So it sometimes works out. We're going a little overtime here.
I have nowhere to go. They don't let me out of this room very often.
Well, the good news is that there's always an after gig hang. So, we end the official proceedings, and we have a little after gig hang if anybody wants to hang out and drink. That's when the booze comes out. You need a refill, Andy, I think.
May have to make another one of these. Oh man!
So
yeah,
I'm gonna have to grab my bottle from somewhere. I want everybody to have keep a lookout for Andy's album.
Yes, please. It's going to be called Early Blue Evening, which is actually a line.
Can you just put that in the chat so people can see what it
by.
looks like written? And maybe where they can find it eventually.
It's actually a line from Langston Hughes' poem, but
is there a website? Do you have a website also? My
website is stupid, but
yeah, I didn't want to mention that.
Oh, you. Let me see if I can get the. Hold on. Talk amongst yourselves.
So, in the next couple of weeks, I'm not sure which week it will be. It might be next week. It might be the following week. we're working on a timeline, and to get the technical aspects together, we're going to have a guest from Sweden, a great musician who lives in Sweden, either Göteborg or somewhere in Sweden, who I had met several times when I was there conducting. And he's going to come on and talk about various things. He actually is a baritone sax player and also a woodwind doubler.
What's his name?
Alberto Pintone.
Sounds very Swedish to me.
He's an Italian Swede.
Then it would be Pintone. Look who I'm talking to. Your name is Muccioli.
Right.
I thought all the vowels were pronounced. And an I is like an E.
But you drop all the last vowels. Come on. It's Jersey.
Not in Italy, only in Brooklyn.
In Jersey, too, yeah.
Oh, in Jersey, yeah.
Andy mentioned it earlier, but maybe we could try to get Catherine Russell on before the end of the year.
That's why.
Oh, yeah, call her up. She's great.
I'm going to definitely try that. Yeah, sure.
Very, very sweet.
Oh, yeah. It's like, when I go into a Mexican place and they don't know what I'm talking about when I ask for guacamole.
You saw that on The Sopranos. Come on, be honest.
Right.
Hey, can we get some guacamole over here?
Yeah. Incidentally, Andy, you did one of our Talkin' Jazz early on.
Years ago with Bill Crow, and we were talking about old stories.
You were talking about jokes and anecdotes. That's right. And we basically sat around for an hour telling jokes and anecdotes and stories.
Well, because Bill Crow was there, and he's published a couple of books about the anecdotes from them.
Yeah, he was a guest already on one of these.
Oh, good, yeah.
I'm telling you, I've been doing these since like the whole year, for Pete's sake. And actually, I don't think I'm going to stop. I think this is an interesting, venue. And as long as you good folks are willing to come around, I'll keep finding people to be guests, and we'll chat. And I'm certain
these are good hangs.
We're certainly
a similar one
open to suggestions
with,
too.
Composers in Los Angeles, but I have to stay up late because of the time change.
Right.
Classical composers mostly, and then Will Friedwald has his clip joint things. I mean, there's a lot of these online. Zoom.
I might ask Will to do one of those with us.
Oh, he's excellent on these things.
We had him do.
He just did Leonard Maltin's podcast.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So anyway, since we've definitely gone over, which, like you said, none of us have anywhere to go. But I want to thank you officially for coming around and doing this with us. And as I mentioned, there is a after gig hang if anybody's so inclined. And just officially, if everybody, you can unmute yourselves, we can give Andy a round of applause, a round of thunderous applause. Come on, let's hear it.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much indeed.
At least, we try to be, we try to have that connection here with the audience for you guys. So I'm going to end the recording and the Facebook feed at this point. So thank you guys very much, and we'll see you next Monday. We'll announce it in the next day or two who the guest will be. Take a look at at your email for an announcement from us. Thanks again. Thank you, Jacqueline. Thank you, Carmen. Thanks to our board of directors. I noticed a few of them were on here tonight. And thanks to all you who showed up.